I call leadership the challenge to be something more than mediocre. The step up to the new challenge, the new opportunity. It was said of Abraham Lincoln, he was at his mother's bedside when she died, and her last words were, "Be somebody, Abe." And if that story is true, evidently he took it to heart and proceeded from that moment to become somebody. And that's the key to leadership. Inner inspection of your gifts and your skills, your integrity and your character. The outer look at how you present yourself as you appear. In some of our other lectures, we go through this whole scenario. The inside is important, but also the outside is important. When you meet somebody for the first time, first thing they're going to do is take a look. Now, sure, they're going to listen, but then they're going to take a look. Now, certainly we learn to evaluate people by more than what we see, but at first we're going to take a look. Let me quote you an ancient phrase. It says, people look on the outside, God looks on the inside. Isn't that excellent information? That's excellent information. So that might mean work on the inside for God, work on the outside for people. You say, well, people shouldn't judge you by your appearance. Well, let me give you a clue. They do. They do. You can't deal in shoulds and shouldn'ts. You got to deal in realities. Now, when people get to know you, they'll judge you by more than what they see, but at first, it's all they got to go by is what they see and what they hear. Now, sure, there's more to come, but at first, you got to pass the show up test, the challenge to be somebody. Let me just give you a brief list. Be somebody wise. There's no substitute for smart. Threats don't make up for smart. Right? Volume and shouting doesn't make up for smart. There's no substitute for smart. Be somebody strong. Strength is attractive. And there are many ways to be strong. Decision-making, character, language, right? As well as vitality and health. There's a lot of strengths, and they're all attractive. But let me give you now the refinement of leadership skills. Here it is. Learn to be strong but not rude. This is refinement. These are the extra steps to become a powerful, capable leader with wide range of reach. Some people mistake rudeness for strength. It's not even a good substitute. Next, be kind but not weak. We must not mistake weakness for kindness. Because kindness isn't weak. Kindness is a certain kind of strength. We must be kind enough to tell somebody the truth. We must be kind enough and considerate enough to lay it on the line. We must be kind enough to tell it like it is and not deal in delusions. That's a sense of kindness. Not weakness, but kindness. Next, learn to be bold but not a bully. It does take boldness to win the day, to become a leader. You got to stride out front. You got to be willing to take first arrows. You got to be willing to take first problem, first trouble, leading the way. You must boldly seize the spring. Farming is not an easy task. You must press the seeds into the soil. I think all of us would relate farming to hard work. It's hard work. Planting the seed, letting it grow, defending it against all of the encroachments of bugs and weeds. We call it not an easy task, but that's one of the best illustrations I know of life. If you want any value at all come harvest, you gotta press, you gotta be bold, you got to seize it. The high life is not for the timid and the shy. Here's the next one, be humble but not timid. Some people mistake timidity for humility. But humility is a virtue, timidity is a disease. It's a malady, it's an affliction. Now it can be cured, but it is a problem. But humility is a almost godlike word, a sense of awe, a sense of wonder, a sense of dimension, a sense of understanding the distance in worth and value, an awareness of the human soul, the spirit, something unique about the human drama versus the rest of life. Humility is a grasp of the distance between us and the stars, and yet having the feeling that we're part of the stars. Next, be thoughtful but not lazy. It's okay to dream, but we must not just become a dreamer. Here's a good refinement. Be proud but not arrogant. It takes pride to win the day. It takes pride in company, philosophy, opportunity. It takes pride in community, school. It takes pride in group, organization. It takes pride in cause and accomplishment. But the key is to be proud without being arrogant. Do you know the worst kind of arrogance? Arrogance from ignorance. It's hardly tolerable, right? Next, deal in realities. Deal in truth. Save yourself the agony. Just accept it like it is. Life is fairly unique. Accept it as unique. Now, best to call it unique. Some people call it tragic, but it's best to call it unique. The black widow spider eats her mate after he's finished his noble task. Now, some people would call that awful. I think it's more important to call it unique. The whole drama of life is unique. Right? The Bible is one of the most fascinating books to read because it is so unique in its presentation. One story says, God and Satan were chatting away one day. Now, see, I wouldn't have thought that. And they're chatting away, and looking down on what's going on the earth. Now, see, that's unique. I thought, how often do they get together and chat and talk about all this stuff? I don't know. But the drama of the story is absolutely fascinating. I mean, it's unique. And on this particular occasion, the story says, God got to bragging about one of his favorite people, Job. And he got to saying, Job, he's my favorite friend. Job, he's the greatest, he's the richest, he's the most powerful, and I'm taking good care of my friend Job. And he kept saying, Job. And finally, Satan got it up to here with Job. And he said, yeah, God, Job, your special friend, you've got this wall built around him. I can't get to him in my normal fashion. And God said, well, he's a special friend of mine. Right? We got this thing going, so I'm taking good care of him. Now, this conversation is going on. I find that fascinating. I find it unique. And finally, in the scenario of the story, Satan says to God, I tell you what, God, if you were to take that special wall of protection down from around your special friend, and if you were to let me at him, I promise you in a short period of time, doing my specialty, he will curse you to your face and then die. God said, you're out of your mind. He would never do that. Not my special friend. Satan said, would you like to wager? Wow. Isn't that fascinating? God says, interesting question. I wonder what Job would do. Now, see, Job doesn't know this is going on. Isn't that fascinating? That's a fascinating story. Finally, according to the scenario of the story, unbelievable, God went for the bet. And he had just one requirement. He said, just one thing. Satan said, what's that? God said, well, you can't kill him. Because he's my special friend. Satan said, okay, I don't need to kill him. But you just take the wall down, let me do my number, and I promise you he will curse you. God said, no way. Satan said, I will do it. And the bet is on. Isn't that fascinating? That's fascinating. According to the terms of the wager, God did as he was required by the wager, and he took the wall down from around his special friend. And when he did, according to the story, Satan did one of his all-time famous numbers on the man. First, took his family. Second, took his wealth, destroyed him. And blow 3, took his health. That's called triple blow. Your family, your fortune, and your health. In one of the last scenes, Job is sitting on the ashes with everything gone, and he is scraping his sores with a rock. And his wife comes along, and she's observed all of this scenario, God forsaking his special friend Job. And she said to Job, it looks like your friend has forsaken you. Why don't you just curse him and die? Satan said to God, here's where it happens. God says, he hasn't talked yet. Isn't that fascinating? That's fascinating. While they both watch, wondering the outcome of this wager, Job says, from his ashes, never. I will never curse my friend. God said, I knew it. I knew it. And he picks up the bet. 10-1 or whatever it was. I don't know. It doesn't say what the wager was. Isn't that fascinating? Now, the rest of the story says God did make it up to his friend, Job. And when you play these kind of games, you do have to make it up. Let's see, what shall I do? I know what I'll do. I'll just give Job twice of everything he had before. Wow. And Job became, according to history, one of the richest, most powerful men in the known world. But isn't that a fascinating scenario? Don't you find that fascinating? Now, it may be a bit frustrating, but we learn to turn frustration into fascination, right? And you just give up on a lot of this trying to figure it out and say, that's one of those things. It's a fascinating thing. I used to say, liars shouldn't lie. See, we call that wasted energy. Why would you deal in such Mickey Mouse pronouncements, right? Liars are supposed to lie. That's what they're supposed to do. That's why we call them liars. Lie. You wouldn't expect them to do anything else. Lie to say, liars shouldn't lie. We call you naive. And we especially call you naive if it upsets you, instead of finding it fascinating. Right? Somebody cuts you off on the freeway. You go chasing them down the freeway and shaking your fist. Hey, save yourself. They say they shouldn't cut you off on the freeway. Hey, hold on, hold on. That's what they're supposed to do. They're known as cutter-offers on the freeway. And if you say, those people shouldn't cut you off, we call you naive, naive. Come on. Here's some stuff that saved me a lot of agony and a lot of anguish and a lot of sleepless nights I used to go through and pulling my hair and wondering. I gave up on all that when I finally understood the 80-20 rule. Let me give some good clues on the 80-20 rule. As a leader, as a manager, being able to influence other people in this 80-20 group, here are some clues. Learn to spend 80% of your time as a leader with the 20%. For maximum efficiency and productivity, this is part of the key. Since it's going to be 80-20, and there's plenty of examples to show that it's 80-20. Not exactly, but fairly close. Ask the minister of the church who picks up the tab here, and he'll say, probably, 20% of the people pick up 80% of the tab. I mean, this is called one of those things, okay? So what do? Well, you learn to work with it and not try to solve it. It's like trying to solve the seasons. You don't solve the seasons, you learn to work with the seasons. They're all set. And some of these things by history are all set. The key is to learn to work with the way it is set. So part of the key of leadership is learning to spend 80% of your time with the 20% because they're doing the 80%. We would call that good leadership sense. Now you say, well, how do you do that? Let me give you part of the answer in how to do that. Here it is. Spend individual time with the 20% and group time with the 80%. This is part of the answer to leadership skills. However, guess who wants your individual time? The wrong group. But that's what life's all about, right? Accepting this challenge. So now you've got to be what we call clever. And you've got to be, another key word, diplomatic. Diplomacy and strategy are two key words for leadership to understand. Diplomacy and strategy. Here's part of the diplomacy. Mary comes and says, I've got a question. You say, Mary, bring your question Saturday morning. I'm going to meet with everybody, and I'll cover it then. She says, okay. Now, it might not be that easy. But if you start trying to put this in perspective now, groups, you can deal with the 80% by groups, and you can talk to the 20% individual. Now, the pull is in the opposite direction, and it always is. Now somebody says, well, I'll just fire the 80%. They're only doing 20% of the business. Well, I wouldn't fool with that. Because after you've fired the 80%, before too long, whoever is left, 20% of them will be doing 80% of the business, and 80% will be doing 20%. Right? This is not something you fire. This is something you learn to work with. The 80-20 rule, very important rule.